I've only got a handful. I mean, um, like Girl Scouts of the Philippines and one from India and Girl Guides of Jordan and but probably not as many as you probably
I
have.
got a lot during the World Jamboree, and
Yeah.
I even got one from Bhutan,
Nice.
which is rare because there was literally only 6 scouts from Bhutan
Wow.
that showed up at the World Jamboree, and I got one from the only adult leader. So, and each of them only brought one neckerchief. So there was literally only 6 neckerchiefs,
Wow.
and I had met him on Facebook ahead of time, and then when we happened to meet as we were walking, I'm like, "Oh, you're the guy." And he goes, "Yeah, you're the guy."
Yeah.
And then he just went, he stuck
That's
his.
awesome.
So I was like, I know if you're not in scouting, it's kind of hard to understand that,
Yeah.
but those swapping neckerchiefs is a
It's
cool.
a big deal. Yeah. Well, more so for from Girl Scouts or um the big like your council or your country patches.
The CSPs, we call them, the council shoulder patches.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have those two going on, and we just had one, the latest one that came out of our council, because we have a Tuskegee Airman in our council. In fact, he was recognized during the last State of the Union address. In
Oh
fact, he was
wow.
a colonel, and then they have elevated him to a brigadier general,
Wow.
a General McGee, and he lives in our
Nice.
council. Trying to get him to talk at during our business resource group meeting coming on, because it's a Black History Month, right? So we're trying to get him to
Yeah.
talk.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. I think this might be all of us for the 7 p.m. crew. So if you're anything like me, you just scarf down dinner, or you're going to be really hungry after we're done.
The Grubhub is coming in.
Um, nice. All right. So how is everybody tonight?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
I'm
Everybody's like,
laughing
yep,
because that's true. I literally like 6:35 was like, gotta eat. Like, and obviously was done in time. So that's how that's going. But yeah.
awesome possum. Okay, I am going to share my screen and hopefully the correct one from all of those to choose from. I've got a few slides that we're actually going to run through. Just as an, we're going to obviously do introductions and that kind of stuff. And I'm going to put in the chat box in a moment.
This is what, Jordan?
It is, yeah, it's Petra.
Yeah. There's a
Okay,
movie about the gin that they did from Petra. I don't know if you've watched it. It was on Netflix.
there we go. No, I have not seen that. Jordan is the one country that if I had the opportunity tomorrow to get on a plane and go with the same security that I had when I went, I would be there in a heartbeat. Um, all right. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Um, I think Robert's the only one I'm not sure where he is located. So I know for at least most of us, it is evening. So I completely appreciate you all taking the time, probably after what I think for most of us has been a very busy and full day. So uh, the nice thing I think too about the 7 p.m. versus the 9:30 in the morning is I've had more caffeine and we have more interesting converse, or they just take different turns than the morning one. I think everybody's um, excited and they've gone through their day. So just a couple things I wanted to go for. So our agenda today is fairly simple, but it does leave um, quite a bit of room for some feedback on our schedule and our syllabus. So before anybody panics, the course you will not be able to see right now in Moodle because it wasn't released. So I'm actually still putting in content and updating the syllabus. So that's also another thing. Don't panic. That's actually when I'm getting some feedback from you all tonight as I adjust some content. I got some great ideas from this morning's crew about some feedback about the topics, and also I've asked a question of, say, expectations and what people really do want to get out of this course. And I'm sure just like them, you all have, you know, significant leadership roles in your space, and that will be influencing a lot of what you want to get out of this class as well. And I think we have the opportunity to learn a lot from each other, and not just me being a talking academic. So we'll do introductions, and I've got some questions there that I will put in the chat box here in a moment. And then I'll go through the topics that I had identified to cover our now 15 weeks. And that's what I want to get your feedback on. And the 3 labs, I'm going to kind of describe what those are, and you will get the lab assignment document this week, in addition to the syllabus, in addition to Moodle being released. So I go ahead and apologize for this is not usually the way future generation courses work, in that before today, you would have already at least had access into Moodle, had a syllabus, and had an idea of all that is going on in the class. The pro to this is that I can get your feedback, and I can modify what I had thought would be best in terms of content to meet your needs. The drawback from that is I'm really behind. So it being a new course is a great thing, but there's a lot behind the scenes that takes to make that happen. So that's kind of what I wanted to do tonight and cover. And usually with my evening course or section, however you want to call it, there's it goes a lot quicker somehow. So since there are 4 of you, we'll see how the conversation goes, but certainly know that we have the full hour. So I'm going to, other than say the typo that is there, put in the chat box what we want to cover with introductions and take the slides down. But of course, I really do, want to hear, of course, your name, duh, right? And but also as a part of that, where you are in the world, and not just within, the US, what state you're in and where you are, what your current role or job is, and if you're currently a student and get to enjoy just being a student, great, share that with us. But if you are currently in, say, a full-time volunteer role, Peace Corps, or you get to work probably 40 hours plus a week and get paid to do that lovely work, we want to hear about it. And of course, when you're not doing that work and are outside of work and school, what do you actually enjoy doing with your free time when you do have some? So just want to learn a little bit more about you all. And I'm going to go in the order in which you all are popping up on my screen. So we'll start with you, Austin, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
As you hear my child coughing and flushing a toilet in the background. Apologize.
Usually it's my dog making noises.
Oh, I'm sure mine will start in a little bit. He might be snoring here.
Yeah. My name's Austin. I was actually in last semester before I had to drop out for several reasons, but I'm from South Carolina, the upstate, so like an hour out of North Carolina, not far from and then like 3 hours out of Atlanta, so not
Okay.
too far. Yeah, we're kind of in the middle between Charlotte and Atlanta.
Cool.
And then current role is I'm a Vista. This is my 3rd year actually. I'm crazy for doing 3 years, but this is where I'm at. I'm hoping to find a job in the upstate soon, doing similar work, and possibly at the same location actually. So we'll see how that goes.
And where are you, a Vista?
It's called Greer Relief and Resources Agency. It's like a local nonprofit that helps with like financial assistance, and most of my job is more the life skills side. We have the safety net programs, but we also have a life skills program that I help facilitate and run, and that's just to help them with their financial management, job skills, and health and wellness. So do a bunch of different stuff, and I'm always trying to make new classes, stuff like that. So outside of work, I love to read. I always have like at least 3 to 4 books with me, and then I'm always usually serving somewhere. A lot of times, church or other opportunities outside of that. So
Great, wonderful, great to meet you, Austin. All right, Carissa.
Okay, welcome back, Austin. I'm glad to see you're with us this semester. Hold on, let me pull up the chat. So I am in Cranston, Rhode Island, East Coast, smallest state, very tucked on in there in New England, if anyone's ever been. I'm also a Vista. I'm actually a Vista leader with the Swearer Center at Brown University. So that's in Providence. It's entirely virtual. I started in June and haven't been in office or met my coworkers in person yet, but such is life. And I think my favorite thing outside to do of work is either go to the beach, or I'm really missing like live music festivals, as I'm sure many people are, but like concerts, anything of that nature. So warm weather also, because it's been snowing all week, so that's fun.
Yeah, and I guess Rhode Island is not really known for its warm weather.
Like in the summer it is, because our beaches, like we're actually the ocean state, so like it's pretty nice, but it's very finicky weather. Like yeah, spring is an interesting time in terms of
I
like
bet.
what weather we have and need to prepare for.
Yeah, I bet. Rhode Island is one of my 6 states left, so
Really?
hoping to make it up your way one day
Yes,
soon.
please.
Robert, are you there? We might check back in with Robert. Rashid, do you want to go?
Sure. Okay, so I'm in Herndon, Virginia, which is about 25 minutes from Washington, D.C. I'm right by the Dulles Airport. So if you ever come through Dulles Airport, here I am. I work full-time as a contractor for Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm an IT project manager. Besides doing that, I do a lot of volunteer work with the Boy Scouts of America. I also have a role as executive director for a nonprofit that I founded called the National Association for Muslim Americans on Scouting. The abbreviation or acronym for that is NAMAZ, which, by the way, the word namaz in Urdu means prayer. So kind of use that as a play to attract certain audiences. So a lot of in the scouting space is what I work on. In my roles within Boy Scouts of America, I'm currently with the National Capital Area Council, the council that I'm active in. Actually, I'm actually registered in 2 councils, the Transatlantic Council and the National Capital Area Council. So in the National Capital Area Council, I'm the chair of the Religious Relationships Committee. So I think technically they said I'm the vice president of the Religious Relationships. And then I'm also at the national level, I serve on the Messengers of Peace Committee. I'm also the affinity chair for there's affinity groups within the National Eagle Scout Association. So the only religious affinity group that exists, because they have ones for like lawyers and ones for policemen and so forth. So we got one established for Muslims. So we have the Association of Muslim Eagle Scouts, and I helped found that. And then what else roles do I have? I forget. I helped start several scouting units, and so right now I'm just mentoring Eagle Scouts. One of them, which now is my youngest son, and then I am the executive officer for a pack and 2 troops in Qatar, Doha. And I think that's pretty much it. I mean, that's actually kind of a lot.
Like, is that all?
I think so.
Good deal.
Yeah.
No spare time for you.
I was supposed to be this past summer. I think it was supposed to be the National Jamboree,
Hmm.
but we got canceled. So sometimes special projects like that pop up, working on things like that. So yeah.
Very nice. And we'll check in. Robert, are you around?
So there's no free time, by the way. And I got 4
Yeah,
kids.
no free time.
I got 4 kids.
Oh
So
my God.
so when you said in your free time, what do you do? And I'm
Yeah.
quietly,
And
I'm
from
laughing to myself.
18 to down to,
Okay, so my oldest is 23 years old,
okay. Gotcha.
and I have 3 boys, 23, 22, 17, and then I have a girl who's 14.
Awesome. I figure with boys, no new furniture for at least 18 years is what I always say. All right. Looks like Robert will join us here in a moment. Um, so just to give you all a little bit of background on me and why I teach this course or why I'm trying to finish creating it. I previously taught the nonprofit management course for Future Generations, and I think they have me slated to teach that either this fall or next spring, which feels like an eternity. But my PhD is in organizational leadership with a focus on nonprofit management, mainly because I've been working in the nonprofit field for almost 20 years now, which is kind of crazy to be able to say. Primarily working in fund development, grant writing. Those are my 2 big ones, but board development and governance, strategic planning is one of my favorite things, which I know sounds very bizarre, but truly love this work. And so that's where I've gotten pulled into the Future Generations sphere of influence to teach this course. Um, I will mention, I guess, so that's my role with Future Generations. But in addition to that, I have my own consulting practice. So I work with clients all over the country. Just finished up 2 massive mental health government grants last week. So that also has an influence on timing for me with those two grants. But have been very thankful to stay in as a practitioner. So I call myself a pracademic very much on purpose, because I practice what I learn and I try to do the same from being an instructor to get you all to do practical things with what you learn, because that's what drew me to this kind of a quote applied degree. Because to me, there is a place for theory, but there is very little use for information that you cannot actually put into use. So it's kind of like my perspective of being a leader, in that I will never ask somebody who reports to me or works for me or is volunteering with me to do something that I wouldn't do. And so I think of learning and teaching the same way. Is I'm not going to give you anything that you can't put to use. So while there's a little bit of theory grounded in some of the conversations that we'll have over the next few months, in theory, it is definitely not priority, as opposed to, okay, let's know the concepts and how we can use them. So that's kind of how I approach all of the classes, whether I'm teaching something like a course like this or something that's 2 hours or 45 minutes, doesn't matter. Outside of Future Generations, in that consulting work, so still do that all over the country, clients everywhere. I own a online book company. So for Austin, who likes to read, we have a now 50,000 square foot space. I literally buy 2 to 3 truckloads of books a week, and we sort those and we sell them. They're all used. We sell on Amazon, eBay, and our own subscription service, as well as wholesale books. And we're getting ready to do the distribution for FGU's Appalachian cookbook, maple syrup cookbook that they put together with their Appalachian project. So we're going to distribute that for them. That is primarily my husband's work. That is not necessarily mine. So I'm not the book schlepper. That is primarily my husband, but I own the business. So it's our business together. And then we also started a literacy foundation. So we are going to be distributing books to classrooms all over the United States, starting with a goal of 1,000 this year. and hopefully expanding to 10,000 classrooms next year. So that is our goal, and our viewpoint and perspective is no teacher should ever have to pay for books. Supplies are bad enough, but no teacher should have to pay for books. So we're hoping to supply 1,000 classrooms. And then on top of that, our goal is that then the teachers give those books to the kids to take, period. End of the year, books are with the kids, and it gives them ownership of the book themselves instead of something that they have to return like to a library. It is theirs. And then every year resupplying them with books. There's literally no end of supply of used books, just so you know. So I run that foundation. So that's that in a nutshell. So it's great to meet you, and it looks like we've got Robert back. Hi there. If you'd like to introduce yourself, we'd love to get to know you more.
Hello, I'm so sorry. I'd love to introduce myself. I was walking my dog. I apologize. She's not used. She's used to 5 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock over here in Denver. Well, not Denver,
Nice.
but in Colorado, and I'm near Denver, between Denver and Boulder, Colorado. And yeah, I just came back from outside. I really apologize for that.
Oh, no problem.
But I'm gonna set her timing to a little earlier. And I'm very sorry I missed the introductions for the other folks. My name is Robert Cavalier, and I'm really excited to start here today with Future Generations University. I work full-time for Boulder County. I work in the Human Services Department. I service a rural community in the mountains area and Front Range. So I do a lot of outreach for medical benefits, especially, and other things. And I also work a little bit on nature writing on the side, and I work for the newsletter for the Boulder County organization. And yeah, I'm excited to meet you. I'd like to hear all about you all. I'd say, where's everybody from? What state? Everybody's from West Virginia or surrounding?
No, none of us are in West Virginia.
Let me
Yeah.
turn the lights on. I'm in the dark.
And Matt should have been joining us. Matt Gleason should have been joining us tonight because he wasn't on this morning. He's in Colorado as well. If you haven't had a chance to meet him, he is in the course. I got to find out where he is because he emailed me this morning. He is, I think, outside of Colorado Springs. And then Rashid is in Virginia in the DC area. Carissa is in Rhode Island, and Austin is in South Carolina. And I forgot to mention where I am. I'm in sunny Dayton, Ohio, where it's -5 Celsius, 22 degrees, and 6 inches of snow on top of ice. So I'm sure you can relate in Colorado.
No, it's actually warmer here. It's been this week has been very cold. It was 10 degrees, but that's cozy. You can put a -5, and it's very dry. And I've got a Siberian Husky who was barking around earlier before it started because she was asking why aren't we outside? We take long walks. I live close to a trail.
Nice.
It has been an unusual winter and a very unusual year. We had fires. We are very up against the sprawl of cities has really reached up into the mountains. There's been a lot of fires and a lot of loss of property. And it was a really weird summer, and now it's a really weird winter. It's been like a very hot winter. It's only now turned on to be cold. So climate change.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I read was that because of actually the pandemic and there was actually a slight bump actually in the temperatures because of the pandemic. It was I forgot the exact reason, but it was actually induced by the pandemic. Yeah, it had something to do with
Isn't it more like in LA there's like less smog, and so now like sunlight can actually get through? Yeah,
exactly, that was what it was.
They've had the best air ever, and now it's
exactly
all, gee whiz.
So that was exactly, so the Earth actually warned because there was, so it's because it could actually, the sun could actually get to the Earth.
And Austin gets to enjoy the bright, sunny, warm weather of South Carolina, and it's like, I don't know what y'all are talking about with the snow.
So I think it was an
Well, we
extra 6
actually
degrees normal than it was the normal, I think was the average or something.
we actually just had snow
Nice. What
a
did
couple days
everybody do?
ago.
Panic?
No, it came down. I was actually at a concert, and when I was walking out, it came down, and it went away the next day. It melted, but it looked. I mean, we usually get it pretty quick, and then it goes away. So, but
Yeah.
I think we're slated for several days this weekend. So
Yikes.
I
Hunker
mean, it's
down.
not too bad, but they do have a. I remember there's a funny SNL skit about when Atlanta got a couple inches several
Yeah.
years ago, and it's hilarious. So,
M-
but we
That
always say
was,
that if the North got the humidity and the heat that they would be freaking out just as bad as.
this is true. This is
So,
very
because our
true.
humidity is ridiculous.
It is. So a good friend of mine lives in Atlanta, or several friends live in Atlanta. One used to work for Georgia Emergency Management. Now he works for FEMA. And when that ice and snow came through Atlanta, he lived in his office for a week just because of the craziness that goes on when the South gets snow. And I'm originally from Kentucky, even though it doesn't sound like it. And yeah, we get ice instead of snow. It's bizarre.
When I moved from Fort Bragg, North Carolina to Hawaii, and I stepped off the plane, the first thing I said, "Oh, it's much cooler here.
It's no humidity.
No humidity, relatively speaking."
Yeah.
So, I mean, at least there was a breeze in Hawaii.
Yeah, the humidity will kill you. That's yeah, I can't move south of the Mason-Dixon line. I think I would die. Um, yeah, 120 degrees in Jordan, I was fine, but because there's no humidity, like it's
Yeah, my
incredibly
mom lives
hot.
in Palm Springs, California, and it's a completely different story.
It is. It is. Well, it is great to get to know you all, and I'm sure we'll have more stories over the next 15 weeks. Which, speaking of, I'm going to share my screen again, and I want to kind of introduce you to the topics that we're going to go over for the rest of the semester. And this is actually where I'm hoping to get a little bit of feedback from you all. In terms of more so in terms of expectations and where they might fit into all of these topics. Um, I will say one thing from the nonprofit course. So 16 weeks is a long time, and of course, nonprofit management is very broad, but so is leadership. So I was intentional to keep it to as few topics. I mean, they are still very broad, but the ability to go a little bit deeper into each of these and to cover a lot of things that will be applicable as opposed to let's talk about all things leadership, because it sounds like from your all's introductions, there are several leadership roles that you find yourself in already. So it's not like, learning about leadership when you're 16 to 18 and have limited roles in terms of at least number and quantity and experience compared to where you all are now, right? So this is what I am is scheduling for our 15 weeks, starting out really with leadership fundamentals. I mean, that's pretty generic, I know, but leadership, starting to get into this idea of what leadership traits are, the aspects and the facets that make a person a leader in our eyes, and how that changes based on perspective and context, experience. A lot of different things will go into how we view other leaders as well as how we view ourselves as a leader. We're also going to look at leadership roles and how we collaborate within, say, teams or organizations as a leader. Again, talking about where you can have a leadership role and not necessarily be, quote, in charge, right? Then we'll look at leading social change or being a change agent. We'll pull a little bit from seed scale there. Someone had a very good suggestion this morning in terms of that idea of being a change agent, how we can kind of split that perspective of being a change agent between, say, our community and our organizations and how that is reflected differently. Then also the leadership on a global scale, looking at cultural context. I think it will be very interesting amongst the four, and maybe if Matt joins the evening course or evening portion of the class, we're all in the United States, obviously with very different perspectives and experiences, but that does take a very different tone and context than, say, the morning session where I've got folks that are all across the globe. And so, yes, while we're a global university, having the perspective of those of us that are just in the States feels very different. So we'll look at cultural context as it relates to the situations that we find ourselves in. Also talking about servant leadership, one of my favorite topics within leadership, and ethical and toxic leadership. So some people want to look at not necessarily the bad side of leadership, but when leadership doesn't go well. Thinking through, we were just talking this morning about ethical leadership and in countries and in locations where corruption is expected and is normal to make things work versus what may not be acceptable in our context, right? So just as one example of being an ethical leader, and then talking about toxic leadership, what makes a leader not necessarily always a bad person, but they're using leadership for which it is not intended. I'm sure we have plenty of examples that we'll be working through as to examples of toxic leadership. And then the last two, also as part of leadership, is the concept of followership. And it is also one of my very favorite pieces of leadership because I think it's just as important. This very much a military concept, a Girl Scout, Boy Scout concept of, even though I'm not the quote leader of the whole group, I am a part of making this group lead and move into a different direction. And that very much requires leaders to empower those that are working with them to achieve a goal and support them as a leader just as much as being empowered to just do it, just get something done. So I love the inclusion of followership with a leadership course because I think it's very vital that we understand that followers are a component of leadership and not sheep. They get a bad rap as sheep, right? And then also volunteer leadership. I think when you look at volunteer leadership, there's very different in motivation, right? We're talking about intrinsic appreciation and value and want to do that volunteer work, as I'm sure all of you that do volunteer work experience. There's a different motivation there. Whereas the work that you do as part of getting your paycheck, that is part of the motivation. And if you have a passion for that work, that is even better. And it kind of makes you feel like, oh, well, I'm not working. I'm doing what I enjoy and I just happen to get paid for it. Volunteer leadership works a little bit differently, right? So that's a big component of this, especially because so many of future generation students find themselves either in a role of leading volunteers or being a volunteer who is leading others. And so I think it's just as important of a conversation to share there. So those are the topics that I am working through for the next 15 weeks that we will cover. Some of them will be 1 week, some of them will be 2. So wanted to actually get your feedback in comparison to what you're seeing here, your expectation or what you really want to get out of this course that might fit into these, or if there was something that you were thinking that isn't on this list and where we might be able to tweak some of this as we get more information in Moodle and move forward.
Erica, if I might make a comment on the leading on a global scale cultural context item. It may not always be global scale. I know in the groups that I work with, all of the folks I have are global in the sense that they come from so many different countries, they speak so many different languages, but I have to deal with very diverse ethnic groups I have to deal with people from North Africa, from West Africa, from all over the Middle East, from different parts of Asia, and then from within the United States, and they're all Muslim, and then they have all different, the gamut, from religious practice, and it is I'm only 22, but look at my gray hairs.
It's a lot. It is a lot, even within the United States. That's what especially all like European friends and stuff, they don't understand, like why more Americans or people that live in the United States don't travel abroad. And it's like, we have 50 states. Like, there's so many different cultures even within the US that
Yes.
there's a lot there.
Yeah. When we say, where are you from?
Right.
Where you're from the United States, and there's the diversity within the United States, things like that. So when I have something, we have something in scouting, in the Boy Scouts, called Wood Badge, and it's a leadership course. And we had to do something called a Wood Badge, had a ticket, and one of the items was called a diversity ticket. And I was putting it together. My troop guide said to me, I was having a hard time figuring out what I was going to do. And he said, listen, Rashid, all you got to do is anything within your Cub Scout pack, because your Cub Scout pack at the time was like, I don't know, we had 70 or 80 scouts in it. And I was the Cub Master. And he said, your unit is already so diverse, so it's automatically a diversity ticket. So my point being is, essentially, as I think the cultural diversity within America, it's automatically global, I think, today. So I think when we use that word global, I think it's just, we can just replace it with the word cultural diversity and understanding. Today I was on a work call, and I could just hear several different, how do you say, different
Accents and
accents.
yeah.
And so I knew just from that context that people were coming, and also within the United States as well. So that their origin was from outside the States and from within the States. And so you have to know that there's different ways sometimes to approach people, and their different understanding of things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I am looking forward to the global piece, or at least the more of cultural competence. And when I talk about the labs, you'll see more of what we'll be doing, like actually like work.
One of my
But that,
jokes is, if I could make money at it, I would have become a social anthropologist, because I just enjoy people.
yeah, and it is very the cultural context of just the US is interesting, let alone the entire globe. But especially when we're talking about leadership, um, it's certainly I find very interesting, because how leadership is perceived uh, in a variety of contexts varies based on even some of the smallest of things. Gender, well, not small, but even the like individual details of gender and race and ethnicity and age. Um, just to start on that conversation of that changes people's perceptions of you as a leader before they talk to you. Um, so it's one that I certainly look forward to discussing in the course. And along with that, we'll be talking about not only cultural competency and doing some assessments and measurement for folks, but also ambiguity, tolerance for ambiguity. Because typically what you'll find is those people that don't get out of their neighborhood, if you will, and aren't exposed to many folks unlike themselves, their tolerance for the unknown is very low. So I anticipate, at least for this group, you all will have a high tolerance for ambiguity just from even being in this university. But that's certainly going to be a part of that leading on a global scale, looking at cultural competence. Feedback on these topics from other folks.
Is there going to be any discussion of like grassroots type leadership? Because I know a lot of what we do is very grassroots led. So
Yeah. And are you thinking more like grassroots, like organizing?
just not, I mean, possibly, but more like just decentralized leadership. Because a lot of leadership, we consider it to be more management, or
Right.
but sometimes it's more grassroots and
Yeah. Okay, I get what
community
you're.
based. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So yes, I would say one in that kind of decentralized perspective would be starting with that followership piece. That's certainly part of it. And looking at leadership, uh, let's see, probably in the roles too, is that you don't have to be a prescribed leader to lead. I mean, there's positional power, and then there's other types of leadership in which just because I'm not chair of something or I'm not president of something, I have leadership skill to motivate or to engage, which is just as value of a leadership skill as it is, leading a meeting. So I think we will touch on it there, but thank you for specifically mentioning grassroots and kind of decentralized leadership, because I can make that part of a couple of these to make sure that it's included. And certainly for those that have been Vistas or AmeriCorps or still are or working in it, that certainly is a helpful piece of looking at grassroots.
That reminds me of a question that has come up sometimes in some of our discussions that I've had in my circles is what's the difference between being a leader and what's the difference between leadership?
Mm-hmm.
That sort of leading from behind kind of concept.
Yeah. My other favorite question is leadership versus management. And I think we'll fit that in there as well, especially around roles, because it is easy to get them confused and mixed up.
Yeah, I think I was even talking about, I feel like that comes up so often to like effective leadership and effective management. And it's
Mhm.
like, I personally am like, I don't think I could learn enough about that. Whereas the like, and I know leadership traits and fundamentals and like roles and collaboration are important. I think, right, like just, it's also like, the first class, I don't know how you're going to teach it, but I'm just like, oh, we've done that. Like, there's so many AmeriCorps webinars, and I don't know if Austin, if you get the emails too, but just like really focusing on that it is also, I think, the other aspect of like leading and managing, because sometimes you are doing both, and like how it's different and how it's important. Because also when for like if you are in a leader role, I feel like maybe you might have an understanding of that, but then that can also change for the people who find themselves in it, not necessarily like choosing to be in that role type of thing. So then maybe
Sure.
for other leaders it could be helpful to like, well, how do you deal with that situation where like you might not have the leader role, someone else doesn't really even want it, or is like not taking charge with some of the other
Right.
topics seem like it might be that, but I'm not too familiar, but definitely a big one.
And I think a lot of the topics that we'll cover, we'll have some great examples that we'll do some breakout pieces for folks to get, well, probably not for the evening session with 4 or 5 of you. This is our small breakout group, but I think we can have some great conversations talking through some examples of the good, the bad, some of the ugly, the, what would you do and how is this applicable to your work? Any other feedback on these or expectations or things that you want to see woven within these topics? And I cut and pasted them in the chat. I took down the slide because I'd rather see your all's faces than stare at a slide.
If I may, I was wondering also, how to deal with different leadership types. And I actually was a participant in a leadership type, I don't know what you call it, I guess study or course through Boulder County, but I felt a bit disappointed, I'll say, because I felt that people took leadership to mean a really gung ho, let's organize. It was almost like a social experiment, the way they had us organized, and I felt that some people were, maybe like me, where we just like to kind of study the situation and see how personalities adapt and see where it goes and how we can have a dialogue. And others would maybe take it a bit as I'm the leader because I know all of these things, and it's just all these personalities, and obviously that gets expanded with the different cultures. Here in Colorado, we do have reservations over in southern Colorado and in northern New Mexico. We have different leadership styles and different type of politicians. And I was just wondering, I guess I would hope to know how to handle these kinds of folks.
Well, and I'll show you all or introduce you all to what the labs are going to do. But part of that will be assessments of your own leadership style on very different assessments through a lot of these, to where you'll understand different leadership styles, even in looking at yourself, to be able to kind of measure another person to say, okay, I think I can figure out where they are in terms of leadership type. Therefore, here's how I can respond to them. Just as a good example, if any of you have taken the DISC assessment before, there's like different colors, DISK, and there's red, yellow, blue, green. I actually moved from a blue-green to a yellow, but definitely not an R or a D. I'm definitely not red. But I work with a lot of folks that are very red. They're very much, and now I forget what the D stands for. But very, what I would consider from my leadership type, overbearing, driven drivers. That's it. So the drivers, and I work, and several of my friends are drivers, where I'm like, after a while, so between being a forced extrovert, so I'm very much an introvert and not a D, I get overwhelmed with these drivers, and when they're an extrovert, that makes it twice as much. But if I know how I can, one, tell them, I hear what you're saying, I need to walk away for a moment and come back to you to respond. I need to take time away to think. It seems like very much like a lot of you are like, I gotta listen and I gotta process before I can respond. And so I've told several, they're not coworkers, they're fellow volunteers. So I'm like, okay, I hear what you're saying. This is what I'm hearing. And I can respectfully disagree or agree, but because I know their leadership type and I know mine, I then know how better to respond to their type. And so with those Ds, I pick and choose like when to be right on something versus just letting them roll, right? And just, I know how they are. I'm going to let them be them. And I'm going to step in when, one, it's appropriate, but two, where I can be better at what I am providing rather than try to immediately respond and say something either I don't mean, or agree to do something that I don't want to do, or feel like I'm pressured. And so so that's just one example to where I think with some of the assessments that we'll do in the course will very much provide you with different perspectives on how to deal with other leaders or to deal with difficult leaders, to understand that toxic leadership piece, even to the point of saying someone being unethical, depends on the situation. But I certainly think as we go through those, especially with the one lab, you'll definitely feel like, or hopefully my goal is that you feel better prepared for responding to leaders that are either difficult or just very different from how you would lead.
That will avoid a lot of trial and error learning, or what we call experience.
There we go. Yes, exactly. All right, I'm gonna bring these slides back up for a moment to walk through the lab, since Robert's question really got us kind of talking through a little bit of what I'm hoping to do with your lab assignments. Going back and forth here.
Yeah, Robert,
So,
I think those were good questions, because I think that's really the heart of the matter. How do we deal with the reality of leading?
yep.
I've had some serious challenges in dealing, and sometimes, especially in the volunteer world, which is most of what I do a lot of, it's like you feel like, okay, take it from my pay. I get
Right.
paid this much.
Exactly. Right there with you. So we're going to have 3 lab assignments. And what you will find if you've taken any other Future Generations courses, you'll find that the community labs really is what they are. that these will feel a little bit different than community labs because it's very much going to be looking at your perspective on some things, but there are going to be some community components. So the first one, and don't worry about schedule. None of this is due for quite some time. And I say quite some time, it's in like several weeks. So we'll get all of this uploaded this week, so you have a better expectation of time and planning. But you will do, and this will be the only thing that you really rely on somebody else to respond to you, is doing a leadership interview. And that can be a community leader, that can be someone you work with, it could be someone that you don't even know, but you know that they're a leader in your community. There will be lots of different kinds of leaders to pull from or to choose from within your community. And again, if we look at seed scale, how you define your community can be very different from how I define my community. So that will entail leadership role or leadership interview. I'll provide plenty of guiding questions that you can pick and choose from or write your own, but to really understand leadership from a perspective of someone that you view as a leader. So how do they take on a leadership role? What is their perspective of how to be a good leader? And questions like that. So nothing to be, not overly complicated, a simple interview, but also kind of interpretation and what you take away from that, what is applicable to your work and what you've discussed with this person. The second part is what I am calling a leadership portfolio, and that's where those assessments are going to be. So we'll have several different leadership types, traits, styles, assessments, in addition to, I mentioned some cultural competency, and I mentioned the ambiguity scales. So a lot of different scales, but you'll not only kind of fill those out, like the yes or no's and the, on a scale from 1 to 5 and those kind of things, but looking at your results from those and kind of interpreting them for yourself. What does it mean for you to be testing high on this area of leadership and maybe a little bit lower on this one? Do you feel that that's true to what you understand of yourself, or is it providing a different perspective of your type of leadership? So we'll have, I think, maybe 6 or 7 in that, which hopefully, at least for me, that's like fun to take those kind of things. Maybe I can convince you all that they're fun. So we'll do several of those, and part of turning in that quote portfolio is more of an interpretation and more so like what you are finding from each one, what you have gained from each one, and whether you agree or don't agree, that kind of thing. And then last but not least, and this will be towards the end of the semester, is writing a personal leadership statement. So more like around 1 page, and that's going to be based on your understanding and conversations of leadership. What is your personal view on leadership, whether that's how you lead or how you expect others to lead? It's kind of very subjective. It's very kind of similar if you've ever had to write like a teaching perspective statement, but what is your personal leadership perspective in a 1-ish page statement? So those are literally only, I guess you could say, our 3 labs. Really what's going to come from, or what's going to be of most value, I think, during the whole semester are going to be our conversations around leadership. So outside of the labs, so your grades will come from labs and participation in these calls, and then the content that is going to be in Moodle. I will be putting up several different like videos each week that'll be recorded. It's unless there's something that maybe a TED talk here and there, but I will actually be recording essentially what would be a quote lecture. It allows me to provide some background information while we leave our Tuesday evening sessions for discussion and learning from each other, discussing the content rather than me being a talking head for an hour. So there will be some reading within those weekly sessions, whether those are like brief articles or some blog posts. Not overly, I'm not asking you to read like 5 chapters every week kind of craziness, but something that I've distilled down and find very important in terms of content that's out there is what will be uploaded into into Moodle. Austin had a great question before the semester started about any required texts or anything like that. Just given the context of the university, there is not a required textbook or anything like that, but I will have some other reading materials that are not even optional. They're just, these are some of my favorites that I'll put a list out there for you if they're of interest to you, but only what's really required for this course will be the readings that are actually in Moodle. You don't even have to go look them up. They will be right there as either a PDF or text document, what have you. So those videos will be, I'm hoping to kind of record all of them or most of them in one foul swoop. Those will be posted at the very latest the week before, and then you'll view those before our Tuesday session so we can have great discussion and group kind of work together. All right, so that kind of gives you a little bit of an overview. We have one more minute, and I want to be respectful of all of your time to end on time, but can certainly stick around to answer any questions. But hopefully that gives you a good overview. Hopefully that's something you all are looking forward to and is something that you expect, and I will certainly work into the content too, the different global contexts and perspectives, the grassroots decentralized perspective, and make sure that when we look at measuring leadership skills or our assessments, that we really deal with how to deal with some difficult leadership types. How does that all sound to you all? Are y'all in?
Favorite topic. Love it.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Interested.
It's my reader. I've been reading this book right now.
Speed of Trust. That looks interesting.
Yeah, one of the Covey, the son.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool.
It's I'm on a advisory council within my work and a leadership team, and we're trying to help change the behaviors within our in our company.
Behavior change is hard.
There's 13 behaviors that there's mentioned in this book.
Wow.
So I chose the trustworthy.
Nice.
First point of Scout Law. So
Any
turns out-
questions?
I love it. This is great. Thank you.
Any other questions or expectations or anything to include?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, I have 8:01 on the Eastern time. So it looks like, Robert, you've still got some sunlight there. That might be light reflecting off of snow. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I have nothing further. I will hang out and answer any questions if you do have any. And I look forward to seeing you here every Tuesday night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I'll